Every day, thousands of people walk through the heart of London's financial district, past glass towers, coffee shops, and the noise of a city that never stops moving. They walk over Gracechurch Street without a second thought. But underneath their feet, beneath the concrete, beneath the basements, beneath centuries of city built on top of city, something had been waiting. Not for decades, not for centuries, for nearly 2,000 years. And when it was finally found, it wasn't found by a targeted excavation or a government-funded research program or a team with ground-penetrating radar and a decade of preparation. It was found in the gap between two filing cabinets. What they uncovered in that narrow space would force archaeologists to fundamentally rewrite how and when London became London. To understand why this discovery matters so deeply, you need to understand what London was. Not what it is now, but what it was at the very moment it was born. The year is approximately 43 AD. Roman legions under Emperor Claudius cross the Channel and push into Britain. Within a generation, they establish a settlement on the north bank of the Thames, a place they call Londinium. It is small at first, modest, a crossing point, a trading post, but Rome has plans for it. Then, everything almost ends before it begins. In 60 or 61 AD, a queen named Boudica, ruler of the Iceni tribe in what is now East Anglia, leads a rebellion of devastating scale. Her forces sweep through the region. Camulodunum, modern Colchester, is burned to the ground, then Londinium. Archaeologists have found the evidence of that destruction still preserved beneath the modern city. A thin, dark layer of burned clay and ash running at a consistent depth beneath the streets of central London. Boudica's fire, the Romans, fled. They abandoned the settlement rather than defend it. Londinium burned. And here is where the story takes its first, unexpected turn. Because within 20 years of that destruction, Rome did not simply rebuild Londinium. Rome made a decision, a deliberate, permanent, unmistakable decision. They chose London as the capital of Roman Britain. And to announce that decision to every person living in this province, they built something that no one in Britain had ever seen before. The site is 85 Gracechurch Street, a 1930s office building sitting in the square mile, all London's ancient financial core, adjacent to the Victorian Leadenhall Market. For decades, archaeologists had known in general terms that the area sat above the approximate northern end of the Roman Forum complex. But centuries of continuous development, layer upon layer of medieval, Tudor, Georgian, Victorian, and modern London piled on top of each other, meant that almost nothing was expected to survive. When developer Hirchton Properties received planning permission in October 2023 to build a new commercial tower on the site, the Museum of London Archaeology, known as MOLA, was brought in as a matter of standard procedure. Not because anyone expected a major discovery, because British planning law requires it. The team dug strategic test pits through the concrete floor of the existing building's basement. The first two pits are nothing extraordinary. Then came the third pit, dug in a narrow gap between two ordinary office filing cabinets. Sophie Jackson, MOLA's director of development, described the moment. In one trench, we hit a massive piece of masonry. It was about 3 or 4 feet wide. They extended the pit. The masonry kept going. What they were looking at were foundation walls made of flint, Kentish ragstone quarried from Kent, and Roman ceramic tile, in astonishingly good condition. Jane Seidel, principal inspector at Historic England, put it plainly. For something so important to the history of London to survive so much development over so many centuries is really remarkable. But what they had actually found was only becoming clear. This was not a wall, not a fragment, not a floor. This was the foundation of London's first basilica, the first seat of government this city ever had. Built between 78 and 84 AD during the governorship of Gnaeus Julius Agricola, barely 20 years after Boudica's fire had reduced Londinium to ash. The structure's estimated footprint spans approximately 40 meters long by 20 meters wide. Think about that for a moment. Roughly the area of an Olympic swimming pool, rising 2 to 2.5 stories, approximately 12 meters tall, dominating the skyline of a city where no one had ever seen a building of that scale before. Sophie Jackson described what it would have felt like to stand before it. It was a really high building, and nobody would have seen anything like this before in Britain. It was designed to impress and perhaps intimidate the local population. This was not architecture. This was a message, and the message was simple. Rome is here, Rome is staying, and London is its capital. But here is what makes this discovery more than a remarkable building. The section uncovered corresponds specifically to what archaeologists believe was the tribunal, the raised platform within the basilica where Roman magistrates presided, where laws were announced, where sentences were handed down, where the administrative machinery of an empire was set in motion in this newly conquered province. Sophie Jackson drew the comparison directly. It's like discovering the Speaker's chair and chamber of the House of Commons, 2,000 years into the future. Andrew Henderson Schwartz, MOLA's head of public impact, went further. This is the heart of Rome in London, where all the decisions were made. The broader forum complex surrounding the Basilica functioned as London's first town square. Markets, public announcements, religious ceremonies, the social, political, judicial, and commercial life of Londinium, all flowing through and around this single structure. At the time of its construction, Londinium had a population of approximately 40,000 people. By the 2nd century, that figure would grow to 60,000 as London consolidated its position as Britain's most important city. And all of it built on a foundation that was just discovered. Between 2 filing cabinets, among the artifacts recovered so far are Roman pottery fragments, brick and tile, but the most quietly extraordinary find is a single roof tile, stamped with an official Roman procuratorial mark identifying the building's connection to London. And pressed into the surface of that tile, still perfectly preserved after nearly 2,000 years, are the fingerprints of the Roman worker who made it. Henderson Schwartz described holding it. You can literally put your fingers in their finger marks on the tile, so it's really a tangible connection to the early origins of the city. A person made that tile. A person who woke up in Roman London one morning, walked to work, shaped clay with their hands, pressed their fingers into the surface without thinking about it, and left a mark that survived every war, every fire, every plague, every rebuilding, every demolition, every basement, every filing cabinet placed above it for 2,000 years. And now you know their hands existed. Now comes the question that changes everything. Why was this basilica replaced? Because here's the detail that no one has yet fully explained. Around 100 to 120 AD, just 20 years after this first basilica was completed, the Romans demolished it, and in its place, they built something almost unimaginable in scale. The second basilica and forum complex was nearly 5 times larger than the first. Its courtyard rivaled what we now call Trafalgar Square. Its basilica became the largest such building north of the Alps. Anywhere north of the Alps. Think about that. Not just the largest in Britain, not just the largest in Northwest Europe. The largest in the entire Roman world, north of the Alps, in London. Why? Why, in the span of barely 40 years, did Rome escalate its investment in Londinium so dramatically and so rapidly? That question has never been fully answered, because until now, almost nothing was known about the first basilica, the one they tore down, the one that was just found between the filing cabinets. Full excavation of the site is still ahead. Mola has made clear that the initial test pits represent only a fraction of what the ground may hold. Writing tablets, styluses, personal objects, the intimate debris of daily life in first century London may still be sitting in the sediment, waiting. And when it is found, the answers to those questions may finally emerge. But there is a deeper implication here that few pause to consider. This discovery does not just change what we know about a building, it changes what we know about a decision. Well, the conventional understanding of Roman London has long suggested a gradual process. Rome arrives. Rome establishes a foothold. Rome slowly, cautiously, over many decades, builds up Londinium into something resembling a capital. What the basilica's construction date tells us is something different. Within 20 years of Boudica burning the settlement to the ground, within a single generation of near total destruction, Rome had already committed irrevocably and at enormous cost to making London the permanent center of power in Britain. That is not a gradual process. That is a decision made with clarity and force. Hannah Platts, a lecturer in ancient history at the University of London, stated it directly. The Romans were quick to instill in Britannia similar methods of governing that they used elsewhere in the Roman world. The basilica was not the result of London slowly becoming important. The basilica was the moment London was made important, by deliberate imperial will. That reframes everything, every story about London's gradual rise. Every assumption about the slow, organic development of this city sits differently now, because at the very origin, there was nothing gradual about it. There was a decision. There was a building, and that building has just been found. What happens next is equally remarkable. Rather than destroying the remains, the developer redesigned the entire tower around them. The building was reduced from 32 stories to 30. Structural columns were repositioned. Load-bearing elements were relocated. All of it to avoid disturbing walls that were built before the concept of England existed. The City of London Corporation approved the revised plans in July 2025. The Basilica foundations will be preserved in their exacta original location, within a free, publicly accessible exhibition beneath the new tower, expected to open to visitors around 2029. A glass floor will allow visitors to look directly down at the Roman masonry below their feet. The exhibition space is being developed in partnership with London Museum, on the precise ground where Roman magistrates once stood in judgment over the citizens of the most important city in Roman Britain. Think about what it means to stand in that space. 2,000 years of unbroken history beneath a single floor. The filing cabinets are gone now. And what was underneath them is about to be seen by the world. Perhaps what stays with you most, long after the details of walls and dates and archaeological methods fade from memory, is the simplicity of how this was found. Not through a century of careful planning, not through satellite imaging or ground-penetrating radar or targeted government initiative, through a standard planning requirement, through a test pit, through a narrow gap between two pieces of office furniture. The past does not wait to be discovered by those who are specifically looking for it. It sits, it endures, it survives fires and plagues and wars and centuries of city building. And then, when the moment comes, it surfaces, not dramatically, quietly, between the filing cabinets, because somewhere beneath the streets of this city, and every old city, the evidence still exists, entire chapters of history, still waiting for the person who digs in the right place. If this kind of discovery moves you, the way it moves me, make sure you hit subscribe and leave a comment below, because there is more of this coming. There always is.